Your opponent plays e4. What to do? What to do? Oh, I don't know. How about the most popular opening, the Sicilian? Oh, that's right, chess kids. I know that many of us grew up playing double king pawn, which is totally fine, pawn to e5, but it turns out that if you look at chess databases over all the games in history, the Sicilian, which is pawn c5, is actually slightly more popular. I can't really tell you why, can't tell you it's better, but I will tell you it creates a little bit more dynamic positions. Dynamic is just a grown-up word for interesting. Now, what white often does at the grandmaster level is to play the move knight f3, and then when black either plays knight c6 or pawn d6 or something like that, let's just play d6, then white plays the move d4, and we enter what's called the open Sicilian. We get a dynamic pawn structure. When black takes and white takes, notice black actually has more central pawns, 2 against 1. Now, why on earth would white do this? Well, white gets better development. Both of white's bishops are ready to come out, not necessarily to those squares, but they can come out, which means that white's king is going to castle more quickly, and white is going to try to take advantage of the lead in development. Now, if you're black, you have some counterattacking possibilities. You can play knight f6 to go after the pawn. One of the most common ways to develop this bishop is to play g6, bishop g7, and go after those dark squares. That's called the dragon Sicilian. And there's also something called the Najdorf, which this guy named Garry Kasparov used to love. But I want to go back because I'd actually like to show you the #1 trap that kids fall into when they play against the Sicilian. We're going to go back to move number 2. After the move knight f3, I actually like when my students are learning the Sicilian to play the move knight c6 and not move the d pawn. And that's because a great many number of kids that don't really have anything special prepared against the Sicilian, they put their bishop on c4 because they're more used to double king pawn openings where the bishop comes to c4, and that's the Italian game. So if you can imagine this black pawn back on c7 and this black pawn up on e5, bishop c4 would be a totally fine move. It'd be the Italian, as we said. However, in this position, because black has not pushed the e pawn, what I love to do is play the move e6. Now the bishop is biting on rock. The bishop is not going to have access to the weak spot on f7. The bishop's going to be aiming at this pawn, which is guarded a lot of times, and black is eventually going to play d5, and it's actually black who's going to get control of the center. For example, white can try to stop d5 by playing a move like knight c3, and now white has 3 attackers, and if black plays d5, black will only have 2 defenders. That's not going to work. However, if we go back 1 move, black can prepare the move d5 by playing the move knight to f6. And then let's just say that white castles or something like this. Now black can play the move d5, and I think every grandmaster in the world would prefer black in this position because black has much more control over the center. These 2 pawns are kind of like the snowplow, except they're on the C and the D files. So we will call them CD-ROM. Do kids know what a CD-ROM is? Probably not. But if white takes and black takes, we can already see this bishop doesn't really have a great home. It's true that the E file is open, but we don't really need to worry about this rook check because you can put either bishop in the way. We'll just pick this one, and you're going to very easily castle on the next turn. By the way, there is one more trap I want to show you. Let's go back to this position where black plays the move knight f6. If white thinks that this knight can be tickled by the move pawn to e5, think again. It's actually a mistake. White is going to lose a pawn by force. After the move knight to g4, the pawn is being attacked twice. And d4 doesn't really help because black will just take that pawn, and then black will just take this pawn on the next turn, the one on e5. So now white can try queen e2, and now white is hoping to play the no parking sign and force the knight back to h6. But do you see a way you can get a third attacker on this pawn? Yeah. You could play d6 and make a trade, but I want to win the pawn because I'm a greedy fun master. Queen c7 is the winning move. We are going to win this pawn by force. Even if white plays knight to b5, we strangely hide our queen on b8. We still have 3 attackers on this pawn. We can play the no parking sign on the next turn and force the knight backward, and everything is coming up really, really good for black. In fact, when you play the no parking sign and the knight moves, you can then expand further with the move b5. You may even trap this poor bishop. So it is a huge mistake on move 3 to put the bishop on c4. Let's just go back to this position. Bishop c4, not a good move in the Sicilian. By the way, if you're wondering what white should do, pawn d4, again, the open Sicilian is perfectly fine, and you can play the move bishop to b5. This move is also fine. Even c3 with the idea of d4, that is a personal favorite of yours truly. Those are all better moves than bishop to c4. Now, this video is only 5 minutes. Obviously, I didn't get to everything. Some grandmasters have been playing the Sicilian their entire lives, and they're still learning about it. But the Sicilian is a great second opening to learn after you move on from double king pawn. Why don't you give it a try sometime?